That is beautiful. So one of my amateur hobbies is astronomy. In fact, when I was a wee lad, that was actually the career path I had my sights set on before I discovered my passion for animation. But still, that doesn't change the fact that I do have a fascination for outer space. In particular, our own solar system. So that begs the question, how has Doctor Who, the show that travels through not only time but also space, depicted our sector of space? Let's find out. I like space. So, time for a quick rundown of how our solar system has been depicted in Doctor Who, whether it's about the planets themselves, or events that are supposed to take place within our solar system, or fictional additions or creative liberties that the show has taken with our sector of space, and more. And before you ask, yes, I'm going by TV only for this analysis, otherwise we'll be stuck here all day. And also, I'm going to disqualify exclusively Earth-based stories because, well, they're a given. Also, I'm not going to be covering other solar systems, fictional or otherwise, like Gallifrey's or Skaro's or whatever. I'm just focusing on the one that we live in. So, how has Doctor Who showcased our celestial neighbourhood?
Everybody listen, we're part of the solar system.
No. Starting off with the 60s, the first explicit reference to anything in our solar system comes from Marco Polo. No, really. When she and Ping Cho are discussing the prospect of observing a moonlit night in the Gobi Desert, Susan makes an enigmatic reference to the metal seas of Venus.
It is like a great silver sea, metal seas of Venus.
Rather poetic wording there, and I suppose we can assume from that she and the Doctor had visited sometime prior. Next up is the Aztecs, with something more explicit. Towards the end of the story, it becomes apparent that a solar eclipse is to take place, which basically serves as the ticking clock of the climax when Latoxel arranges the sacrifice of the perfect victim in order to bring the sun back.
The moon will pass before the sun and all will be in darkness.
At noon,
Even so.
there's to be an eclipse.
And hey, we even get a snazzy photograph of a real eclipse in there, so that's pretty cool. We also see the moon directly again in the Reign of Terror. I do love me some old-timey lunar filmography. Our next stop comes in the form of the Dalek invasion of Earth, as part of the backstory for the titular invasion is that Earth was bombarded by a cosmic storm of meteorites which the Daleks had weaponized into germ bombs in order to weaken Earth's population with pandemics and diseases and make the human race easier to subjugate. Also, there's apparently moon stations by the 22nd century.
You've been on a moon station or something?
Yes, quite so.
Damn, took us long enough.
This is my planet. I just can't run off and see what it's like in Venus.
Well, don't worry dude, Susan will tell you about those metal seas later, I'm sure. Speaking of Daleks, the next depiction comes from Season 3, with the ominous dramatic beat of Mission to the Unknown making it clear that the Daleks and the powers of the outer galaxies intend on conquest of the solar system.
Mars, Venus, Jupiter, the moon colonies.
But first Earth, of course, because Earth has us humans and OMG save us. The Daleks' master plan doubles down on this, as Mavik Chen, the guardian of the solar system, turns traitor and joins in on this evil plan, having secretly mined Uranus for terranium, apparently the most valuable material in the universe which can only be found there, to fuel their ultimate weapon. Obviously this plan doesn't succeed, so our solar system assumedly remains intact after all of this. In terms of more inconsequential details, side character Brett Vion was apparently born on a Mars colony, and there are interplanetary games of some description between Venus and Mars.
Wait till you hear from me.
Then take your party to Venus.
Seeing as we never see Carlton again after Mavic Chen tells him to go to Venus, I can only assume he was training for said games. Episode 6 is also entitled Coronas of the Sun, the coronas in this instance referring to the Sun's outer atmosphere. Kinda confusing title there, considering the Sun's coronas don't play any role in the episode itself and aren't even brought up at all, but whatever, it sounds cool, I guess. That's the thing, this giant epic of a story has kind of confusing wording choices in general. You see, the term solar system is often used by many people to describe any planetary system, despite the fact that the adjective solar relates specifically to Sol, our sun. It's a relatively minor technicality that no one except sad weirdos like myself really care about, but it does make some statements confusing, particularly when Brett Vion describes the planet Desperus as the penal planet of the solar system.
Desperus is the penal planet of the solar system.
So, does that make Desperus the first fictional planet of our solar system in Doctor Who? But wait, it gets even more confusing when you take into consideration that the Daleks themselves were described as the power from the solar system in Mission to the Unknown.
The power from the solar system, the Daleks.
And the implications of that line just don't bear thinking about. Whoa, I'm going cross-eyed. I think it's for the best that we just wave those particular lines away. Anyway, as for the rest of the Hartnell era, we witness the destruction of the Earth at the mercy of the Sun in the Ark as the last of humanity evacuate. And finally, in the 10th planet, while making visual checks on Mars to establish orbital position, the crew of Zeus 4 discovers something new.
There's another planet out there.
Another planet?
Yeah.
Mondas, the first undisputable fictional planet Doctor Who has contributed to our solar system. Formerly Earth's twin millions of years ago before it drifted away on a journey to the edge of space, it eventually returned to an orbit between Mars and Venus in 1986.
Eons ago, the planets were twins. Then we drifted away from you on a journey to the edge of space. Now we have returned.
And began absorbing energy from the Earth. But it ultimately ended up coming too close and absorbed too much to the point where it disintegrated. What a return. Rip Mondas, we hardly knew ye. Oh, and also in that time it became the breeding ground for cyborg boys. Apparently no negative repercussions came from this, or if they did, then they're never brought up, like whether Mondas's return caused orbital disruption of Earth or any of the other planets, but spoiler alert, this won't be the last time Doctor Who shrugs off stuff like that. Anyway, aside from all of that, a cute detail early in the story is that apparently a manned expedition just returned from the moon.
I mean, you have sent people to the moon? Yeah, an expedition just returned.
In late 1986, even though ultimately in real life man didn't set foot on the lunar surface past 1972. Bless the predictions of the past. The second Doctor's era hits the ground running in terms of solar system lore, as the very opening story, The Power of the Daleks, is set on the planet Vulcan. Now I know you're thinking, but isn't that a Star Trek reference? What has that got to do with... Well, don't interrupt me because I'm about to tell you. In the 19th and 20th centuries, the planet Vulcan was actually a genuine scientific hypothesis. French astronomer Urbain Le Verrier, who mathematically predicted and thus co-discovered the planet Neptune based on irregularities in Uranus's orbit, noticed similar irregularities in the motion of Mercury, the solar system's innermost planet, and thus theorized that another planet must exist even closer to the Sun than Mercury itself to explain this anomaly. Thing is, Vulcan has never been discovered, and Mercury's strange motion was later explained by Einstein's general theory of relativity. But that didn't stop Vulcan from becoming popular headcanon, I guess? To the point where David Whittaker and Terry Nation straight up acknowledge it as the solar system's innermost planet, in their 1964 comic Invasion of the Daleks. Now I know I said I was going by TV only for this analysis, and I am, but considering David Whittaker would later go on to write Power of the Daleks for TV only 2 years later, it's a reasonable connection to make. That said, there are a few discrepancies.
Oxygen density 172, radiation bill, temperature 86.
Radiation and temperature readings that low on a planet closer to the Sun than Mercury?
Most of the ships from Earth do overshoot.
But, at the same time, the fact that most of the ships from Earth overshoot would make a lot of sense for a planet as close to a gigantic gravity well as the Sun. Am I being too much of a sad nerd? I'm being too much of a sad nerd. There's mercury pools all over Vulcan's surface, which is funny because the next planet along is Mercury. God help me. So anyway, the Underwater Menace ends with the Doctor programming the TARDIS to go to Mars.
I know. Let's go to Mars.
But then it goes haywire, and come the Moonbase, it turns out to have arrived on, well, the moon.
But I have seen pictures of the moon's surface, and that's what this looks like.
Around the year 2050, humanity has set up the gravitron on the lunar surface, a device which can manipulate the Earth's weather and prevent catastrophes like hurricanes. And in 2070, the Doctor and friends pay it a visit. Quite a lot of cute moon shenanigans take place here. Like, look at the companions and their moon jumping. Aww. You can just tell that everyone involved in the production was getting hyped about the space race, and that's adorable, and that enthusiasm continues throughout the rest of the Second Doctor's era. I really like the attention to detail of how the Moonbase has to make its own artificial day and night cycle to accommodate the human staff, due to the moon's far slower rotation period. Oh, and also the Cybermen turn up to infiltrate and end up deflecting an Earth relief rocket into the gravity of the Sun. Brutal stuff. The Ice Warriors also pitches in some of its own solar system lore, providing an answer to the question of whether or not the red planet Mars was ever capable of supporting life. And the answer is yes, because that's where these sleepy lizard boys come from.
Where are you from?
From the red planet.
Mars!
I can get down with that. I've always loved the Ice Warriors. They're among my favourite Doctor Who species. Really dodgy science here though. At one point someone says that the Martian atmosphere is mostly nitrogen.
What do we know about their planet's atmospheric conditions?
Chiefly nitrogen, with virtually no oxygen or hydrogen.
Even though the Mariner 4 flyby mission of Mars occurred just 2 years earlier, and confirmed that its atmosphere is almost entirely carbon dioxide with very little nitrogen at all, maybe that information wasn't as readily available back then, or maybe Brian Hales just chose to ignore scientific facts? The Doctor uses that very information to deduce that the Ice Warriors are weak to ammonium sulfide though, which turns out to be correct, so I guess Mars's atmosphere is mostly nitrogen in the Doctor Who universe then? Station 3 from the Wheel in Space is in orbit somewhere within the solar system, as Zoe makes reference to their distance from Venus ranging from 24 million and 162 million miles.
24,564,000 miles at perihelion, and 161,350,000 miles at aphelion.
Oh, I was dying to know that.
Which means the station sure is in one highly elliptical orbit. Also, this story makes it canon that Venus itself produces its own flora.
Hey, that one comes all the way from Venus.
Speaking of Cyberman stories featuring Zoe, the inciting incident of the invasion involves a fleet of cyberships on the moon's surface firing a missile at the TARDIS.
That's a missile. What?
The dark side of the moon serves as the off-screen Cybermen's base of operations, while their human partner in crime, Tobias Vaughn, prepares for their invasion on Earth. The cyberships eventually fly to the near side of the moon to broadcast hypnotic control signals, but Unit and Zoe blow them up with a mathematically calculated missile chain reaction. Snazzy stuff. The 60s' last stop in the solar system comes in the form of the Seeds of Death, as we return to the moon once again, and our favourite Martian lizard warriors also pay it a visit. This story takes quite an interesting perspective in a metatextual sense. Being broadcast at the start of 1969, the year when the Apollo missions finally pay off with men touching down on the lunar surface, Brian Hales envisions a future where space travel has become so mundane and taken for granted that even rockets are treated as obsolete.
Nobody cares anymore about exploring space. Life made... well, it was made too easy by TMAT.
Instead, transportation is done entirely via TMAT, Transmat cubicle technology with a control centre on the moon, because the human race apparently haven't learned that putting a base on which the fate of all life on Earth depends, on the barren and exposed lunar surface where it could easily be infiltrated and taken advantage of, isn't exactly the smartest idea. Well, basically the inevitable happens when the Ice Warriors barge in and plan to use it as the beachhead for their invasion of Earth. Either way, we get a very enthusiastic sequence where the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe fly from the Earth into a lunar orbit in a crummy antique rocket, and nearly get stuck adrift.
You mean we'll crash?
Well, either that or drift on endlessly through space.
And towards the end of the story, when the rest of the Martian fleet close in, the Doctor does a bit of the old genocide by setting up a fake homing signal to lure them into a solar orbit that would eventually incinerate them.
We are being torn into the orbit of the sun.
Damn. The second Doctor's hardcore. But yeah, a fair amount of gravity-based shenanigans in this adventure. And that's about it for our solar system in 60s Doctor Who. Now, there are some undeniable lapses in logic to be found here, not to mention flat-out ignorance of the facts at some points, but it's Doctor Who, that's bound to happen. And honestly, the enthusiasm for the subject matter is so endearing that it helps me to excuse any misgivings I might have anyway, so you know, it's all very well and good. I definitely want to do this for some future decades of the show, so maybe expect those in future videos, although I don't know when. When I feel like it, innit?